Identity as the absolute self is the essence. Therefore, the self is just being, not being this or that, just being. Consciousness is forever non-objective. Knowing itself by itself, such is the innate state. Therefore, self-realization is just being. Not being this or that, just being. Non-individualized, unformed, birthless, deathless, without a trace of duality. This is the reality, the self. And this self is just being. Never being or becoming this or that. Eternally just being. The egoless state is the real state. The only state that there actually is. Egolessness is identity with that absolute self. So self-realization is just being, not being this or that, just being. Being forever is. Consciousness ever knows. And bliss is never interrupted. To comprehend fully what has just been stated, know yourself. If you have a question this morning, or you wish to relate your own experience, at any point, feel free to do so.
As I continue meditating on the substrate that I am, it seems like that meditation is getting firmer, and so much so in the ordinary so-called daily activities. Last night we had friends over, there was this talk and all of this stuff that happens, and even amidst the talk I was able to see the substrate of rather than this reflection on the mirror that has been so much a source of seeming confusion. And this morning, driving over here, there's a spot where you start coming down and it opens up, and when it's clear, there's a kind of vastness there. And, you know, sometimes I see the vastness and it reminds me of the vastness of consciousness. And this morning it seems like that consciousness is so vast, and still how small is this idea of an individual in the midst of this consciousness.
Now the individual is seen to be quite small. Just how small he is should be thoroughly investigated. It is like looking for a corner in space. The more closely you examine it, the smaller is the corner, till it reduces itself to just a conceptual dot with no reality. See if he exists. The consciousness is vast, all-pervading. Where is there room for the individual? If the imagination of that individuality can be effaced in any way, reality knows itself. You know yourself. Now that reality is considered the substrate, what if nothing ever occurred on it? If all the emphasis is given to the substrate, so that the sense of happiness and identity and reality return to it, the rightful place, that which is appearing on the substrate will prove to be nothing but the substrate and cease to exist as such. And you're quite right. This does not depend on circumstances, time, place, etc. This is self-knowledge.
Truth of one's own being is absent of fear, absent of falsing tendency. And in my own being, which is infinite, self-luminous, there's no duality, only peace. And that's what I return to and try to remember and embrace and wish to be absorbed into. To just always know myself as self.
If you wish to know that, and abide as that so that there's no alternative, eliminate the ego that provides the alternative state. If the ego provides the alternative state of bondage, naturally you'll seek liberation. In seeking liberation, eliminate the bondage by eliminating the ego. And then you find that what you were seeking was not a state, but the real being, which is the only thing truly existent the whole time. eliminate what seems to constitute the ego. That gives rise to the illusion of unhappiness in the midst of bliss, of limitation in the midst of the infinite.
In eliminating the ego, I can see that, I know that ultimately it's a matter of looking directly into the source of the ego, or the source of ignorance. And I've done that in the past. I just need to do it again and again.
Who is the one who has done it?
Meditation.
Who is it? This is what you have to find out. It is not a verbal or conceptual answer. Just find out who he is. If you find out who he is, you will find that which is stateless, which is invariable. If you want union with the Absolute, the ego has to go. It is a false assumption, just imagination. So it is not difficult to destroy something called the ego, because it is unreal to begin with. Nevertheless, if you go on believing in it, it will give you trouble. To have the realization of identity with the Absolute, the ego must vanish. In its vanishing, it's said that you've attained union with the Absolute. Shankara compares it by analogy to an image in a mirror. If the reflecting medium is taken away, he says the image of your face merges with the original. How does it merge? By its absence.
Can one work to eliminate the ego by reversing one's negative karma and becoming as good and seeing the self in others as much as one can?
That's in every way beneficial. If we're going to see the self in others, the inquiry will help that as well, because we tend to see others as we see ourselves. If you are aware of the divine self within you, you'll be aware of the divine self within others. In fact, it must be a natural corollary. If one would say, I see the divine self in me, but not in others, that's not the divine self. Whatever that is, that's not it. If there is what you described as negative karma in one direction, to do that which is beneficial to all, which is purely good, this is natural for us. What is of the nature of negative karma is unnatural for us. The good tendencies will undo the bad tendencies, the Maharshi says. But those good tendencies eventually should resolve themselves into an inner tendency, a natural tendency to know the self, whereupon you become all transcendent. The ancient scriptures describe that transcendent state as beyond bad, good, etc. It is utterly impersonal. That's beyond action, beyond the body, etc. But if you have the instruments of body, speech, and mind at your disposal, use them for what's true, for what's good, for what's beautiful. All of that's beneficial.
So becoming a bodhisattva as much as one can might really be the entry point to this.
But I suppose if we looked at the word bodhisattva It has two component parts, sattva and bodhi. Bodhi signifies knowledge, an awakened understanding, or an enlightenment. Sattva means luminous, inclined towards knowledge, leading directly to knowledge. What is that knowledge? It must be knowledge of oneself. If you're going to endeavor to become a bodhisattva, or like one of the saints, certainly do so. What else should be done with the manifest life? But you should also know what the bodhisattvas and the saints, etc., what they know. Consider the word Upanishad, usually taken to mean that which is heard when sitting near. So you sit near, what do you hear? What happens? Shankara says the word Upanishad means that which destroys ignorance and leads directly to the knowledge of Brahman, breaking down the word in a different way. So if you sit near and listen, you should eliminate all ignorance and directly reach that knowledge which is within you. If you endeavor to be a bodhisattva, you should awaken to that bodhi.
I have a couple of things. First is just to relate about renunciation. When I first started to examine or, kind of meditate on renunciation, my first response to it was one of, sounds like I have to give up something, and that something I've attached some happiness to, like worldly things. But the more that I've, meditated on that, the more I find that it's really just the opposite of that. That the renunciation is like returning the source of happiness to where it actually comes from. So there really isn't any giving up. It's almost like a recovery or I guess it's just getting rid of the ignorance of where I used to look for the happiness. And now there's just a joy in finding one more place where it's like, gee, I didn't realize that I had attached something there, that my happiness was there. And renunciation, which at first looked like, almost like a suffering, or a common notion I had was renunciation was suffering, and turns out to be just the opposite. One of just it's like breaking those strings of attachment that bind the real source of happiness.
So the notion previous to the experience ran completely contrary to the actual experience.
180. Just
The thing, whatever the thing might be, to which you're attached, seemed like the source of happiness. Renunciation then seemed like a reduction in happiness. But that was the previous concept. But the experience proves otherwise. Renunciation is a joy, and there was no happiness intrinsic in the thing whatsoever.
Last week I took exception to the notion of inquiry because it seemed like an intellectual thing nonetheless. And I started just, whenever I'm in the midst of something, to say, who is this one? Without labeling it in any way. And I had the same satsang feeling each time I started doing that. And it felt like I was on vacation, or I had been on vacation when I came back.
The other thing I want to talk about was this thing of existence. When I'm deep in the experience of existence, then, well, let me see if I can frame it a little bit. The experience makes sense. The logic of it is what I'm struggling with. So the teaching says that when one eliminates the I thought, then all the downstream object and form goes with it. And that experience, or I have the experience that that's true. And as the practice deepens, there's more there's more of that experience of just being in the state of existence without the I thought. And even activities like the body and mind and speech can go on without identifying with them. But where the logic it doesn't seem to make sense is, okay, well, if you get rid of the I thought, then there shouldn't be any downstream thoughts after that. So why do I have this experience of not being identified with the mind and the thoughts, but it still goes on? And it seems like if you just get rid of the I thought, then that other stuff wouldn't exist at all.
Have you inquired as to whom it is going on for? When you say existence and when you say, I still have thoughts, activities, etc., are they the same I?
Well, no, one's existence and the other one is...
Can there be two of you?
No, there can't be two.
So you must make an inquiry as to who really are you. The same absolute consciousness is appearing as the supreme, the witness of all this, and as the uncreated, determined by some notions, very few notions, no notions about it.
So someone knows about all three of those.
When you approach that as the supreme, there's still someone who knows about it. When you stand as the witness, much of the duality has been erased. In the uncreated, there's no one who knows. And if there's no one who knows, there can be no one who does not know.
And the one who would not know would be an ego or a second.
So to destroy ignorance, look into the one who has the ignorance, for whom it pertains. All the ignorance is based on the misidentifications. The forms of the misidentifications are all based on the central notion of I. This I thought, or I mode, as the Maharshi called it, aham vritti. Inquire into that I. See what is there.
I get it to some degree. It's just that there's, I know I'm about to say yes, but. It's like stepping into the bear trap anytime you see. So if it does occur that there's thought going on, if it does occur that there is a body.
How do you know that thought is existent at all? The passive voice description, it happens. It allows for a lot of assumptions. How do you know if thought exists?
the only proof for it is another thought, which is a little questionable. Which then the next logical thing is, well, where are these thoughts coming from? And who's having them? So there seems to be a common cure to this.
The common cure is who am I? gets rid of the samsara, the illusion. How do you know a thought when a thought occurs? If its source and its ending place is not apparent to you, although those are valid inquiries, where do they go and where do they come from? But if they're not, that's not apparent to you. When you know a thought, how is it that you know it? What actually is a thought?
I thought I knew that real well. I don't know.
Ignorance is always like that. The illusion is just stacked up assumptions, which as long as we take them for granted, they seem solid, as if something experienced or something to deal with. But they're made of less substance than dreams. So you say, I have my thoughts. Thoughts occur. Do they? Is there one who has them? Do thoughts occur? What exactly is being considered a thought?
I talk about thoughts like they're real. But I don't even know if they actually are.
This is clear.
I thought I knew what they were. And then who was thinking that?
If you inquired to him, both the subject and the object being unreal vanish.
So then how is this being different from the undifferentiated stage of the child?
If the child's state is truly undifferentiated, there cannot be a difference from an undifferentiated state. It would be a contradiction.
But you speak of consciousness knowing itself.
Mm-hmm. That does not require thinking. It's knowledge of which we speak here, not thinking. This does not require thinking. It does not require elimination of thinking, as if it were a real thing now occurring that would disappear in the future. This is knowledge of reality.
Weeks ago, I asked a question about discrimination, and it's so simple, yet it wasn't clear, your response. I sort of felt like I was a riddle. I was trying to get around a riddle as you were responding. Thought I heard you say that it's not really that we need to deny the existence of that which is unreal. But what's most important is just to ask, to identify it, and then ask, who am I? That the actual denying the existence of is irrelevant, insignificant, or not effective. What is important is to identify it and then ask, who is having this, who feels this way, who thinks this way, who am I? That's discrimination. Am I correct?
Yes, just, who am I is the essence. If we come to a conviction that this aspect is unreal, it may be helpful, but unless it is connected with the inquiry, who am I, it's of dubious worth. If we wander off in our minds thinking, is the world real? Is this manifest thing unreal? Is it half real and unreal? It may be unreal, but I still see it, etc. If it's unreal, why do I see it? Okay? If it's unreal, why doesn't it go away? Although, for those who are deeper, they could see if it's unreal, how could that unreal thing go away? Because it's not there to begin with. But if we debate in our own minds this way, without actually inquiring, that won't necessarily yield liberation. If we inquire, who am I? The direct path is revealed by the Maharshi. If we inquire, who am I? Since the this is dependent on I is integral to this. With the subsidence of the I, the whole question of this vanishes. First know the self, then see if there's any this to consider existent or not.
So you're saying that the denial of it as being real is okay as long as you attach and identify it with the question, who am I?
That's correct. The countless aspirants who became sages and who in the course of their practice meditated on the unreality of the world were not wasting their time. It was time well spent. In the beginning of the text, Who Am I?, you'll recall that the Maharshi first elucidates the point of what one is not, starting with the body, going right up to the state of residual nescience, such as what appears in deep sleep. None of this I am. He says, the awareness which alone remains is what I am. The nature of that awareness is Satchidananda, being, consciousness, bliss. Immediately thereafter, in response to the question, how will the realization of this come about? He says, when the world, which is what is seen as real, is no longer taken to be real, like the example of the rope and the hallucinated snake, then the realization will be there. If the unreal is still taken to be real, if one still sees the world as such, the realization will not be there. It's a simple statement. It's also very true. So if you're inquiring and you feel there's this, whatever it is, however you describe your experience, whether in subtle or gross terms, whether with spiritual embellishments or as just worldly terms, you need to then inquire, for whom is this? The perception of it, or the taking of that to be real, depends on certain misidentifications. Therein lies the efficacy of discerning its unreality, because you want to see the unreality of the misidentifications that are the foundation stones to enable that dualistic false perception to occur. To eliminate the dualism, we go right to the core, who am I? Do you see the connection now?
Tied into that, so you were saying earlier that consciousness is, in practice is about meditating on that which is non-objective. How is that? How is it that, I know I was at the retreat and we had pujas. So how is it that tied in then with pujas, where it seems there's an external focus? Where the consciousness we're retracing, you say, are back to the source.
Mm-hmm.
How is it tied in with the practice of puja?
Puja itself is not a practice for self-realization. However, as soon as you relinquish the I am the body idea, what's inside and what's outside. To get a clear understanding of puja without inside and outside, without a worshipper and worshipped as distinct, you might want to look at the text Nirguna Manasa Puja, worship of the attributeless one in the mind. It corresponds to the third chapter of the Ripa Gita. Read that first, and then we can discuss puja.
I was thinking about the conversations you had about thought and the identity and the reality. I was kind of trying to see, well, okay, am I putting reality into those thoughts or identity? They seem very similar, actually. Is that true? In other words, is it my identity that gives the reality, or is it the fact that I've misidentified?
The sense of reality given to thought, where does it come from?
Comes from myself.
So then there's no differentiation between identity and reality. Oneself is all this. In Maya, it appears divided between subject and object, so then you have identity and reality as if they're distinct things. Identity inheres in being. Reality inheres in being. Identity and reality are identical. Don't attribute them to thought.
So I guess once you identify with a separate I, though, poof, then, all this stuff, you're going to have reality spread out.
Within one notion I, all illusion plays out with all its time, space, matter, energy, separate beings, whatever. The experiences of those beings, the states of mind of those beings. Is there an I?
Seems like there's. I try to meditate on this. And maybe it's because I don't know. It seems like it springs up in different places.
What is it that springs? You say I springs up. What is that I? It's not the body, that comes later. Likewise the senses. Even the thought, I, the word I, that comes later. What is it that springs?
But it seems like it's just a thought in itself.
Do you actually think the thought, I? Or is it more vague?
Definitely more vague. It seems like it's not a thought, it's just an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
But the assumption has to be something, doesn't it?
Does it?
Seems like, okay, I've been trying to notice how that assumption springs and it attaches itself onto whatever thought,
Okay.
the world, or the body, or all of them.
So destroy the forms of that assumption by inquiry. What of the I itself? If it's not the body and not the senses, and it's not a particular thought, it cannot really be springing from the absolute self, because the absolute self could bring nothing forth other than itself. Otherwise, its undifferentiated, non-dual nature would not be true, and liberation would be impossible. That's absurd. So what is this I that springs? This assumption. Look at it for yourself.
First of all, it seems like, is it a true statement that sometimes when you look, it may not be found?
Why did you say sometimes?
Because sometimes it seems like it's sprung and gotten really big. And
You didn't look. Stan?
I seem to hold on to the idea that there is such a thing as conditioning, that past events and condition present events and all this kind of causation stuff. And I seem to hold on to it in spite of my logical argument to the contrary. There's nothing that is being conditioned, but I don't really understand that there's nothing that's being conditioned. I still hold on to the idea. I suppose it's just the ego idea that something is conditioned, but I have trouble letting go of that.
Just be concerned whether you're conditioned or not. That events are conditioned by previous events, it's prarabdha karma. One thing causes another. You may or may not be able to perceive all the causal factors. How many factors go into any one particular event?
Well, I was speaking...
But how about yourself?
I was speaking in personal terms. That is my own conditioning by my own past, my own memories and that sort of thing.
What is the nature of the one who's conditioned? This is what should be examined. The real self has no conditioning whatsoever. It is unformed. That events condition each other? Yes. We usually like to think in terms of the preceding events determining the succeeding events. However, from Vasishta's perspective, it might be the other way around sometimes. But that's a completely different topic. Likewise with thought. Preceding thoughts generally seem to influence the succeeding thoughts. So those who cultivate pure inward turned mind get results in the course of time. This is evident to anyone. However, yourself is not something conditioned. Not of the world, not of the mind.
So all that conditioning is just mental stuff. I assume it has no relation to the real self.
Yes, that's sufficient. If you can see that things that are conditioned have no relevance to your real self, that those things with limitations, whatever those limitations are, have no relevance to your real self. That your self is beyond all such things, because you're not of the world and you're not the body and you're not the mind. You're not any form whatsoever. You have not been created. You will not be destroyed. If you can see this in your own nature, that will be sufficient.
नाहं मनुष्यो न च देवयक्षौ न ब्राह्मणक्षत्रियवैश्यशूद्राः न ब्रह्मचारी न गृही वनस्थो भिक्षुर्न चाहं निजबोधरूपः.
I am neither man, god, yaksha, brahmin, kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmachari, householder, forest dweller, nor sannyasi, but I am pure awareness alone.
Nimittam manashchakshuradipravrittau nirastakhilopadirakashakalpaha ravilokacheshta nimittam yadhayaha sanityopalabdhiswarupohamatma.
The instrumental cause of the activity of the mind, I, and others, devoid of all conditionings, akin to space, just as the sun is the instrumental cause of the world's activity, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I. the self.
यमग्नुष्णवन्नित्यबोधस्वरूपं मनश्चक्षुरादीन्यबोधात्मकानि प्रवर्तन्त आश्रित्य निष्कम्पमेकं स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Resorting to that of the nature that is eternal and is knowledge, the mind, I, and others, not possessed of knowledge, enter into activity, like fire and heat, the unwavering one, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge am I, the self.
मुखाभासको दर्पणे दृश्यमानो मुखत्वात् पृथक्त्वेन नैवास्ति वस्तु चिदाभासकोऽधीषु जीवोऽपि तद्वत् स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
The reflection of the face seen in a mirror is not a thing that exists different from the nature of the face. The reflection of consciousness in the minds, the individual self jiva, is also like that. That which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge am I, the self.
यथा दर्पणाभाव आभासहानौ मुखं विद्यते कल्पनाहीनमेकं तथादिवियोगे निराभासको यः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as in the absence of the mirror, with the disappearance of the reflection, the face, without being imagined, remains one, so likewise, on separation from the mind, that which remains as the non-reflected, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I, the self.
मनश्चक्षुरादेर्वियुक्तस्वयं यो मनश्चक्षुरादेर्मनश्चक्षुरादिः मनश्चक्षुरादेरगम्यस्वरूपः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
That which being one, the pure sentience, though of the nature of the self-luminous, shines as if variegated in the minds, just as the sun, being one, existing in waters and platters, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I, the self.
य एको विभाति स्वतः शुद्धचेताः प्रकाशस्वरूपोऽपि नानेवधीषु शराबोधकस्तो यथा भानुरेकः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as the sun, illumining numerous eyes, does not illumine sequentially what is to be illumined, so it is with that which, being one, is the awakener of numerous minds simultaneously, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I, the self.
यथानेकचक्षुः प्रकाशो रविर्न क्रमेण प्रकाशीकरोति प्रकाशम् अनेकाधियो यस्तदैकप्रबोधः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as illumined by the sun, the eye recognizes the form not illumined, so likewise the one illumined by which the sun illumines the eye. That which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I, the self.
विवस्वत्प्रभातं यथा रूपमक्षं प्रगृह्णादिनाभातमेवं विवस्वान् यदा भात आभासयत्यक्षमेकः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as the sun, the one, in many waters, moving and stationary, is to be looked upon as of a nature not following, though only one, seen as many in the moving minds, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge am I, the Self.
यथा सूर्य एकोऽप्यनेकश्चलासु स्थिरास्वप्यनन्यद्विभाव्यस्वरूपः चलासु प्रभिन्नासु दिष्वेवमेकः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as a great fool with his vision obscured by the clouds thinks the sun obscured by the clouds is not shining, likewise that which seems to be bound to the perception of the ignorant, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge am I, the Self.
खनच्चन्न दृष्टिर्खनच्छन्नमर्कम् यदा निष्प्रभं मन्यते चादिमूढः तदा बद्धबद्धादियो मूढदृष्टेः स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Woven together in all manifest things, the one whom all manifest things do not touch, of a nature ever pure and transparent like space, that which by its nature is eternal and is knowledge, am I, the Self.
समस्तेषु वस्तुष्वनुस्यूतमेकम् समस्तानि वस्तूनि यं न स्पृशन्ति वियद्वत्स्वदा शुद्धमच्छस्वरूपम् स नित्योपलब्धिस्वरूपोऽहमात्मा.
Just as there is difference for pure crystals due to conditioning, likewise there is difference for you in different intellects. Just as for moons in the waters there is movement to and fro, likewise is there movement for you also here in minds, O all-pervasive One.
उपादो यदा भेदता सन्मणीनां यदा भेदता बुद्धिभेदेषु तेऽपि यथा चन्द्रिकाणां जले चञ्चलत्वं तथा चञ्चलत्वं तवापि ह विष्णो.